You hear about trade deficits all the time, right? But what if the whole debate, everything we hear on the news, is focused on completely the wrong thing? Today, we're going to peel back the layers on global trade, and we're going to uncover this powerful kind of hidden force that really changes everything. So let's get into it.
I mean, really, what if the entire way we talk about trade deficits is just backwards? What if the problem has nothing to do with the stuff we buy, but everything to do with the money we attract?
You know, for as long as I can remember, the story we've been told is super simple. A trade deficit just means a country, like the US, is importing more stuff, more cars, more phones, you name it, than it's selling to the rest of the world. It's just a simple count of the goods crossing borders.
And whenever this imbalance becomes a big political headache, what's the first tool they pull out of the toolbox? Yep, tariffs. It's the most obvious, most talked about weapon in the whole trade policy arsenal.
Okay, so if we're going to solve this puzzle, we really need to take a much closer look at that weapon. So let's start by kind of rethinking what a tariff actually is, and more importantly, what it actually does. The textbook definition couldn't be simpler. A tariff is just a tax on imported goods. But that definition, it's only half the picture. And the other half is where it all starts to click.
This totally reframes the whole thing. So on one hand, yes, a tariff is a tax on consumption. It makes that imported TV more expensive for you and me. But look at the flip side. It's also a subsidy for domestic production. It literally takes money from the pockets of consumers and hands it over to local companies to encourage them to make more stuff here at home.
And that leads us to a huge question. If tariffs are just moving money around inside the country, what if we're using this big, clumsy hammer on a symptom, the flow of goods, while completely missing the real disease underneath?
And that, my friends, brings us to the real culprit, the invisible engine that's actually pulling all the strings, these massive, unseen flows of capital zipping around the planet. This quote right here, it just nails it. For hundreds of years, we thought trade, the actual goods, was the dog, and the money financing it was just the tail. But in today's world, that whole relationship has been turned completely upside down. So here's the big idea, the main takeaway. Modern trade deficits are not about a country's shopping addiction. Nope, they are the simple, unavoidable, mathematical result of where global money wants to go. It's not about the cargo ships, it's all about the capital accounts.
Okay, so how does this actually work? Let's break it down. First, you have countries like China that are basically designed to produce way more than their own people consume. This creates these enormous pools of savings. All that cash has to go somewhere safe and stable, right? And it finds a home in the United States, which has the safest, deepest financial markets in the world. But here's the kicker. It's just accounting. When all that foreign money flows in, the US has to, by definition, run a trade deficit to balance the books. One causes the other.
And this flips that old argument completely on its head. You know how we always hear that the US has a deficit because it doesn't save enough? It's actually the other way around. The US is almost forced into a low savings rate precisely because it's the country that has to soak up all this excess capital from the rest of the world. The tail is definitely wagging the dog.
All right, so if capital flows are the real problem, are tariffs even the right tool for the job? Or should we be looking somewhere else entirely? Like maybe at the financial system itself?
Let's put them side by side. Tariffs, they target goods. They mess up supply chains, and the cost usually lands on consumers and certain businesses. But an alternative, something called a market access charge, or a MAC, it targets the capital directly. It affects financial flows, and who pays for it? Mostly banks and short-term speculators, not you and me at the checkout counter. It's just a much more precise tool. And what's really cool about a MAC is that it's smart. It's precise. You can design it to discourage that hot money, the speculative cash that jumps around causing instability, while barely touching the kind of long-term, productive investment that we actually want, like when a foreign company builds a new factory. Now, this entire system, this constant flood of capital into the US, it's all built on one thing, the special, unique role of the US dollar in the world. And that status, it's a huge blessing, but it's also a big curse. I mean, the perks are massive. Because everyone sees the dollar as the ultimate safe place to park their money, the US government and American companies can borrow money cheaper than basically anyone else. It attracts a huge amount of investment, and it acts as the world's financial anchor when things get storming.
But, and this is a big but, what happens if you start messing with that system? If the whole thing is built on the US being a stable, open market, what happens when you start throwing up walls like tariffs?
Could a really long trade war actually put that special dollar status at risk?
And this chart right here really shows you what's at stake. It tracks how wild price swings have been over the decades. See those crazy spikes? Those are times of serious financial chaos. If the dollar were to lose its role as the world's anchor, we could see a return to that kind of instability.
And look, this isn't just some academic what-if. Researchers have actually modeled this. They found a potential tipping point. A broad, across-the-board tariff of around 26% could be enough to make the whole dollar-based system either fall apart or force the world to find a new currency to rely on.
So, all of this forces us to step back and look at the bigger picture. If tariffs are really just a sideshow, then what's the real fight about?
We've got to realize that trade policy is so much more than just tariffs. It's all these other things that countries do. Things like manipulating their currency, or holding down interest rates, or even using labor laws to keep wages and spending low. Basically, any policy a country uses to shift income away from its own households and towards its producers is a form of trade policy.
And that's really the bottom line here. A country's trade balance with the rest of the world is just a mirror, a reflection of the choices it makes at home about how it balances what its people produce versus what they're able to consume.
So I want to leave you with this one last question. If we've been fighting the wrong war with the wrong weapons, and the real battleground is actually the global flow of capital, are we on the verge of the world's first real capital war?